So next speaker is the Dr. Hiroshi Kunugi, and he is now the director of the Department of Mental Disorder Research, the National Institute of Neuroscience. And he's graduated from the Tokyo University School of Medicine in 1986 and moved to for a short period in London University and come back to the Tokyo University Department of Psychiatry. And on 2002, he's taken the position of the present director. And his present talk is mental illness and nutrition. So please.
Dr. Kosaka for kind introduction, and I express thanks to organizing committee to provide me with opportunity to present. So as Elizabeth suggests, the food component is very important. I'd like to now talk about mental illness and nutrition, and I'd like to present a bit of our data. So in our modern society, we are exposed to lots of a variety of social stressors such as social relationship, economic crisis, families crisis, and so on. So chronic stress facilitates the development of mental illnesses such as depression. But we are often unaware that we are also exposed to hidden stress due to modernization. In the modernization process, we got, unfortunately, hidden stress, including excess energy intake, nutrition imbalance, and inadequate physical activity, and irregular rhythm, irregular sleep-wake rhythm. Paradoxically, these hidden stress comes from our efforts to reduce stress. Our society established a system to get enough food, but instead we tend to eat more than necessary. And it's very easy to get very tasty food, but such tasty food is often processed food and subject to nutrition imbalance. And we are now we can get food without much physical activity. And thanks to the development of electric lights, we can work and play all day long, which leads to irregular sleep-awake rhythm. So such these hidden stress and together stress has detrimental effects on mental health and facilitates the development of depression. Indeed, appetite dysregulation and impaired physical activity and sleep disturbance are symptoms of depression themselves. So maintaining the good habit in terms of diet, physical activity, and sleep could be a barrier against stress and prevent the development of depression. So the accumulating evidence suggests that depression is associated with excess energy intake, such as obesity, diabetes, and metabolic syndrome, and diet style, for example, Mediterranean diet versus Western diet. And inadequate intake of M3 polyunsaturated fatty acid, EPA and DHA, and associated with reduced amino acids such as tryptophan, and deficiency of vitamin Bs, particularly folate and vitamin D. And also mineral is associated with the depression such as iron and zinc deficiency. And decreased tea, coffee consumption has recently been reported to be associated with depression. This is a paper from published in Archives General Psychiatry 2010, reporting the bi-directional relationship between obesity and depression. This is a meta-analysis of longitudinal data, and the pooled odds ratio for the association between the obesity and depression at baseline and depression at follow-up was 1.5. Similarly, the odds ratio of the effect of depression on obesity over time was 1.5. So depression and obesity increase the risk each other. This is a paper published in British Medical Journal 28, reporting the adherence to Mediterranean diet decrease the several diseases. So greater adherence to Mediterranean diet is associated with a significant reduction in overall mortality from cardiovascular diseases, incidence of mortality from cancer, and incidence of Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. So these results seem to be clinically relevant for public health, in particular for encouraging a Mediterranean-like dietary pattern for primary prevention of major chronic diseases. The Mediterranean diet is characterized by a much intake of vegetables, fruits, nuts, legumes, seafood, olive oil, grains, and a glass of red wine. So Western diet is characterized by food, meat pie, processed meat, pizza, potato chip, hamburger, white bread, refined flavor. Refinement is bad. So sugar, flavored milk drinks, and beer. If you eat too much, it leads to very sad consequences, such as depression and dementia. So now, Mediterranean diet has been shown to reduce the risk of depression as well. This is a paper published in Archive General Psychiatry 2009. They followed up 10,000 students for 4 years, and nearly 500 people were identified as depression, and they found Mediterranean diet pattern reduced the risk of depression. there is virtually no data in Japan to examine the relationship between diet or nutrition with psychiatric disorders. So we started studying diet and nutrition in psychiatric disorders. It's exceptionally that Dr. Nishi examined the effect of fish oil. So we administered a questionnaire to investigate the diet by a brief type self-administered diet history questionnaire, and measured nutrient concentrations in blood, such as vitamins, amino acids, fatty acids, lipid, and so on. So these are preliminary data, but it shows that depressed people tend to be shifted towards overweight. So this is BMI and underweight. Underweight is the same, normal weight, and overweight, and obesity. So depressed people tend to, the frequency of obesity and overweight is increased in depressed patients. We also found that the lipid abnormalities were increased in depressed patients. So the abnormally lower HDL cholesterol is significantly more common in depressed patients than in controls. And abnormally high level of serum triglyceride is higher in depression than in controls. As much as 40% of depressed patients showed abnormally high value of serum triglyceride. So together, our results provide support for higher rate of overweight or obesity and metabolic abnormalities in depressed patients, which is likely to result from their unhealthy diet. So what is the possible link between metabolic abnormalities and depression? So comparing this is one possibility, that comparing body of evidence document that obesity is a chronic low-grade pro-inflammatory state. This is mentioned by Professor Ebaul already. So alteration in adipokines, adipokines means cytokines derived from adipocytes, such as adiponectin, leptin, and resistin, as well as TNF-alpha, which is already mentioned by Professor Ebaul. IL-6, IL-1 are commonly reported in obesity and depression. So the obesity and depression share the same pathophysiology in the alteration of these molecules. This is our data in CSF, which was collected by Hattori, Dr. Hattori, and here shown here the CSF cerebrospinal fluid IL-6 levels in schizophrenia and depression has increased compared to controls. Serum IL-6 has also increased, tended to increase. So this data support the presence of neuroinflammation in these psychiatric conditions. The link between neuroinflammation and depression may be mediated by altered tryptophan metabolism. This is tryptophan metabolism. Tryptophan is essential amino acid, so we must have tryptophan from food. Tryptophan is a precursor for serotonin and melatonin, which is plays important role in depression and sleep. And inflammation, cytokines such as IL-6 and TNF-alpha increase and activate the renin pathway. So this pathway is activated, so tryptophan decreases, which leads to decreased serotonin and melatonin. And also the pro-inflammatory cytokines activate quinolinic acid pathway, which is toxic, which facilitates excitotoxicity of NMDA receptor. So these two mechanisms are considered to give a risk for depression. So if so, one might expect that the tryptophan level might be decreased in depressed patients, and we did find such results. So plasma tryptophan level was significantly lower in the depressed patients compared to controls. In our survey on nutrition, we also found folate was decreased in depressed patients. So abnormally lower folate level was significantly more common in patients with depression compared to controls. So folate plays an important role in folate cycle, which works together with the methylation cycle. So methylation cycle is very important in the biosynthesis of DNA, protein, lipids, and neurotransmitter, monoamine neurotransmitter. So it is very obviously the deficiency in folate is likely to increase the risk of depression. And other nutrients such as vitamin B6, 12, and methionine are also considered to be important. So it's 3 p.m., so it's tea time. No tea time. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the psychotropic effects of green tea. So green tea in Japan, I'd talk about a little bit about history of green tea in Japan. Green tea was brought from China in approximately 800 years ago by Eisai, Buddhist, very famous Buddhist Eisai. He wrote a book entitled A Note on Drinking Green Tea for Good Health in 1193. Eisai explained about the different kinds of tea, methods for making powdered green tea, tea drinking for promoting health. And 400 years later, Senno Rikyu established tea ceremony as a comprehensive traditional art in 16th century. This era is the age of war. So perhaps the psychotropic effect of green tea is important, play an important role to establish this tea ceremony. We, in our survey, the frequency of green tea consumption is decreased in depressed patients compared to controls, which was highly significant. And recently, some researchers reported coffee consumption is reduce the risk of depression. So we also examined such relationship, and we also obtained support for such relationship. So coffee consumption was reduced in depressed patients compared to controls. So green tea has is known to have many pharmacotherapeutic ingredients, such as catechin, caffeine, and theanine. And theanine is uniquely found in tea and green tea. So we focused attention on theanine. We performed a preclinical study examining the effect of theanine. So theanine is very interesting because its chemical structure is similar to glutamate. And glutamate is now the molecular target of drug development in depression and schizophrenia. And we found that theanine has improved sensory motor gating assessed by pre-pulse inhibition in mice. Pre-pulse inhibition is a measure of sensory motor gating, and the deficits in pre-pulse inhibition are often seen in schizophrenia patients. And we also found reduced immobility in mice administered with L-theanine compared to vehicle-treated mice. We examined a bit about the mechanism. So we found the expression of BDNF protein was increased in the hippocampus in mice treated with L-theanine compared to vehicle-treated mice. And in cultured cortical neurons, L-theanine administration increased calcium in neurons, which was cancer or suppressed by MK801 or AP5 NMDA receptor antagonists. So it is possible that the theanine is a potent glutamate system modulator. Based on the preclinical results, we went on to conduct clinical trials to see the effect of L-theanine on sensory motor gating in humans. So we obtained preliminary results suggesting the L-theanine has improved pre-pulse inhibition in a dose-dependent manner. So we are now doing clinical trials in schizophrenia patients. So this is the last slide. So to summarize, modern diet may confer vulnerability to stress, which prompts the development of mental illness. Our data demonstrate nutritional imbalance in depressed patients. And green tea may have served as a psychotropic herb in the Japanese society. We obtained evidence for psychotropic effects of L-theanine, a unique amino acid in green tea. So thank you for your attention.